The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today. As you know from the lovely British voice that precedes my own, a hoop ball presentation, hoop-ball.com is the website, and that is the important stuff. I'm Dan Besbris, he is Vince Miracle, and we're going to continue our tour of the NBA landscape as of now. We'll work our way through this free agency period, but before we get started, some platitudes because it matters to me. Vince, how you doing?
Roses are red, violets are blue. Dan, I cannot wait to pod with you.
That's the sweetest. Hey, you warm the cockles of my heart. I don't know how to respond to that. I assume that a lot of the folks that listen to fantasy podcasts are probably also kind of big into the gaming world to some degree, at least. Did you ever, Vince? Do you remember? And I know I've got you by a couple of years. But that old video game where the horrible translation of the opening sequence was written out as "all your base are belong to us," or did I go before your time?
That thing just went right over my head.
Yeah, before your time. I thought there was a.
How about this? I'll bring something that was in both of our times. So like you said, you have a couple of years over me. Do you remember the game that used to go "Shamalama Ding Dong"? And it's every time a guy dunked. Can you name that game and what station it was on?
Well, I mean, that's one of the NBA jams, right?
It was NBA actually Hang Time.
Hang Time. That's an N64 game. I remember that one.
Yeah, remember he used to go, he couldn't hit the red side of a barn.
I have great memories of that one. That was that was probably about 17 years ago now. It's holy moly.
Playing 2-on-2.
Oh,
playing
man,
2-on-2.
that was as many characters as a game system could render back then. But anyway, yes, it is good. It's good to pod with you as well. I was nervous you were going to talk about Pokemon, and I thought maybe we could dodge it for an episode. So I'm just gonna pretend like I didn't even say.
You brought it up. I gotta ask you.
No, come on now.
I gotta ask you. Did you catch any new ones?
I caught something called a Mankey. I don't know what that is though.
It's me, but in a cartoon version.
I caught Vince. I caught a miracle in a jar. That's a beautiful thing. So, for the people that's listening in, for those that are joining us for the first time, either in a while or for the first time ever, first of all, welcome or welcome back. Right now on Fantasy NBA Today, we've really kind of officially hit the off season. You know, we have a little bit of a lull. We had summer league action. We had the wild start to free agency. And now, finally, late July, I think we can officially put a marking on our calendar that says, okay, the NBA's not really at the forefront of people's minds right now. They're talking about, well, not much. It's baseball season. But the sports landscape overall is a little quiet. The Olympics are kind of the big thing going on right now. But I do want to bring up one big development in the NBA before we get back to our fantasy analysis, Vince. And this is, to me, where I know last week we talked about how Adam Silver may have been sort of mouthpiecing for the owners a little bit, and neither one of us was all that happy about it, but I think we cut him a little bit of slack. This is a great development to me, and that is that the NBA formally announced that they are pulling the All-Star game out of North Carolina until discrimination laws are repealed. And Vince, we talked about how some of these guys were taking a stand at the ESPYs, and now the league as a whole, owners, players, when the commissioner makes this call, it is because he has the backing, usually, of both sides. They're taking a stand, and it's a monetary one now. So I was really impressed, and that's kind of, to me, the starting point. I was blown away in a good way. What was your take on the NBA's decision?
I think you brought it up in last week's show too, is that the NBA has just really had just a great way of how they address public issues. I mean, maybe it's not the NBA completely with what happened on that stage at the ESPYs, but it's a part of it. Just the way they address certain things, and for example, Jason Collins and the situation that he was going through, being the first, athlete to come out saying that he was getting the NBA, and the way they were handling him. I think this is just another way of like they're not, doing anything in which would show that they're, looking bad at other people. Like they don't care what you are, because they want to go to a city where no one's going to be feeling uncomfortable. And I think this was the right move.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a progressive stance on social issues. I hesitate to use a word like progressive because I think listeners may immediately attach that to one political party or the other, but that's not, to me, what this is about. This is about taking a stand for human rights, and it doesn't really matter who you're voting for in this November or next November or whenever the next time you cast a ballot. This is about a league saying we will not tolerate discrimination, and it's a wonderful decision, and I hope that other leagues follow where, yeah, it might be a bit of an inconvenience for the league to reschedule this, to change everything around plans that were already in motion, but it's an inconvenience that you have to take if you're going to represent the populace. And right now, most people feel that rights should be equal, and I agree with those people, and I hope our listeners do as well. So kudos to the NBA, Vince. That's where I stand on this. I love the decision. I hope that it kind of furthers this cause of why is anybody worried so much about what everybody else is doing, and the NBA is kind of putting their money where their mouth is. So good job.
And I love the fact that they're not saying no, we'll never go to Charlotte. Like, I believe in the presser about it is that Adam Silver, mouthful there. I don't know why. It's too much Rockstar Energy drink this
Billy
morning.
Madison runs the NBA now?
but basically what he said in that presser was that, they're going to give him a chance in 2019. Like, they're not taking it away from Charlotte. Charlotte definitely deserves to have an All-Star game there. At least that's how the NBA feels, and I completely agree. I think every fan base should at some point host the All-Star game. And I think that Charlotte would be a great destination to do it. It's just at this time with what their laws are, it's just not a right time to be there as NBA. And I love the stance that they took on that by addressing it and moving the All-Star game. But I think it's also, speaks very highly of Adam Silver saying that, you know what, if you guys get this fixed, if you can get this changed, we want to come there. We're willing to, do what we have to do to make sure you guys are hosting this All-Star game in just 2 years. So basically, we're not giving up on you. Just get this fixed.
It's a beautiful thing. I'm a tremendous fan. I think the NBA is doing the right thing, and I hope other places follow suit.
He's done a great job as the new commissioner.
Yeah, he's taken hardline stances where he needs to, and he's got the backing of ownership, and he's got the backing of players, and he's doing right by the league, and he's doing right by I think humans in total. So nice job once again to the NBA for being the first one through the door to actually make a stand on some of these things. But topical stuff aside, we do still have some teams to cover, Vince, and the one division in the Western Conference that we have not yet covered is the Southwest, at least in its entirety, because we did take a gander at the Spurs, and at the Rockets due to the Dwight Howard fallout and the Tim Duncan retirement fallout. But if you wouldn't mind, Vince, indulge me. Can we take a tour through all 5 teams and pick out some interesting players to watch?
Let's do it. I'm ready. I got my notes ready. I'm here. Let's do it.
All right, perfect. So here's my thought. Let's. And this is kind of what we did with the Northwest on our last episode as well, which you can go back and listen to now that Vince, Aaron, and the Hoopball crew are all working hard to make sure that these are available on iTunes and on YouTube. There's so many different ways to get at the podcast. And Vince, I'll certainly ask you details on that later on the show. So anybody who's getting it one way can learn out how to listen another. But let's quickly breeze through the teams that we've already covered. And that's the Spurs, the Rockets, and to some degree, the Mavericks. And then we can spend a little bit more time on the Grizzlies and the Pelicans because we really haven't talked about those teams yet. San Antonio is where I want to begin our little journey through the Southwest. Tim Duncan retired. Pau Gasol signed. Not too many other changes over there. Boris Diaw is gone. We talked actually on our last show because he ventured to the Northwest division, I should say, in the Western Conference. But for the Spurs, LaMarcus Aldridge, Pau Gasol, Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green, Tony Parker. You're looking at a lot of the same faces. Ginobili's back. Patty Mills is still there. I mean, I'm hesitant to say that any one thing is going to change a great deal. I think Kawhi Leonard is sort of, you're seeing what he is, and you got a good look at him last year. LaMarcus Aldridge, you're kind of seeing how he fits in with the Spurs, and I don't see his value changing a good deal. I know, Vince, that your thought on Pau Gasol was that he is a great fit. I agree with you on that, but I do, just because he's playing for Greg Popovich now, feel like his numbers are going to come back a round or two. He's going to just minutes alone. And then Danny Green is a big question mark because he really could not, as you just said with NBA Hang Time, hit the broadside of a barn last year. But it feels like that's the type of number that ought to regress in the long term. So my quick take on the Spurs is Pau Gasol, downgrade 1 round or 2. Danny Green, possible value if you have the stones to go get him this year. Tony Parker, just with another year on his legs, slight downgrade as well. Where do you stand with this team?
Pau Gasol, we hit on him. I think his value basically stays the same as it was last year. LaMarcus Aldridge is going to be a highly touted player in drafts. Same thing with Kawhi Leonard. I think those are the obvious for sure. Tony Parker, a late round guy. He's going to be hit or miss for me. I'm not a huge. I'm personally going to give him the stamp of someone else's headache.
Someone else's headache.
I have to give him that stamp for me. You brought up Danny Green, though, and I have him as one of my more interesting players on this team because you know what? He's one of those guys that had a very big down year last year, but you still saw the signs or the potential signs of what he can do for you as a fantasy player. The 3-pointers, the defense, the steals, the occasional block, the decent percentages, both from the field and from the free throw line. It's just he had such a down year, so you kind of are wavering him a little bit. He's definitely going to fall in your drafts, but I am going to say that I have him on my list as like a late mid player to look at because of what he can do. And you know, I call it the Wesley Johnson line because Wesley Johnson is a waiver wire player that basically fills up a stat sheet with like 6 points, 3 rebounds, a steal, and a block. You know, I call it Wesley Johnson line. Danny Green does that, but he also adds the 3-pointers, multiple 3-pointers. He gives you those percentages, and of course it's the steal and a half to 2 steals and the potential 0.8 blocks with low turnovers. I mean, he's definitely the guy that you're targeting in 9-cat leagues to definitely have on your roster. So he's on my list of mid to late round guys.
Yeah, Danny Green is such an intriguing player. 2 years ago, or I should say the 14-15 season, not this most recent one, but the previous year, he had about 12 points a game, 4 boards, 2 assists, over a steal, over a block, 2.5 3-pointers a game on almost 44% shooting from the field and 88% from the free throw line. He was the number 22 ranked player in all of fantasy basketball, but that was 2 years ago. This most recent season, and this drop-off is pretty obscene, he was the number 82 ranked player, averaging 7 points, still got 4 rebounds, so, you know, good on him there. About 2 assists, 1 steal, less than a block, 1.5 3-pointers per game. So his threes came down by a full 3-pointer per game. He shot 37.5% from the field and 74% at the free throw line. So he came way off year over year. And, you know, his preseason ranking, I think going into this last season, was about a 6th rounder. I reached to get him. I thought he was going to be, you know, a top, I didn't know, maybe not top 30 guy with LaMarcus Aldridge coming in, but I thought at least top 40 and top 50 for sure. I still think that that's where you can get him. I think that if you draft him in that 5th, 6th round neighborhood, you're looking at a guy that if he bounces back, you could get a 3rd or 4th round value from him. So it's gonna.
He could bounce back in a big way.
He could.
He's a gym rat. He works hard.
And I mean, if he starts to fit in a little bit better, maybe there was just something that wasn't right, a year to clear his head. but you've got to have the stones to do it. He was one of the hugest fantasy headaches in all of basketball last year, and a lot of people are soured on him, myself included. I had him, and I couldn't get rid of him. You just can't bring yourself to dump a guy that you draft that high unless he gets brutally injured. I think I ended up finally dropping him in March. So it was one of those things where, I mean, you've got to be able to just sort of close your eyes, throw that horse pill in your mouth and swallow it, and hope for the best. But boy, if he falls to the 6th round in a draft, I think you've got to grab him, and I think you may even consider getting him around earlier than that.
Yeah, I think you can potentially look at him as one of those players that you draft and guys are like, are you serious? And he could be a steal for you if you get him in the 6th round. I think the 6th round is right where you want to try and snag him, maybe like even the latter half of the 5th round. And again, these are all projections, not our actual numbers quite yet. But I'm a huge fan of Danny Green. And you know what it could have been too, and that's what a lot of people have been saying, is that it could have just been that year since he got paid, and having to live up to his money with now that, he knows he's going to have the ball in his hands. I think that, it's just that jinx of a year. You know how the San Francisco Giants, the odd year curse? Maybe Danny Green just had the got paid curse.
Yeah, it happens to a lot of guys, and people write it off as a ridiculous notion that a player no longer cares when they get paid, but it's really sort of the opposite, is they start to care too much. They feel like they need to live up to a certain check that's coming in the mail, and they get in their own head. And I watch it every day watching minor league baseball players. It's about 95% cerebral for a lot of these guys. I mean, these are good ball players that probably can exceed the high A level of baseball, but they can't get out of their own way sometimes. And that was the issue with Danny Green last year. Popovich is not a guy that's going to give players a long leash, so as soon as he can tell that Danny Green is overthinking it or doing something outside of his usual nature, he got yanked out of the ball game, and Bobby Simmons played 30 minutes. So, I mean, you just have to hope that he's out of his head. Does an offseason clear his head, and he can go back to being a top 30 guy? Maybe not. Top 40? Maybe. Top 50, I think, is an easy get for him if he starts to play a little bit better again. So that it sounds like you and I actually agree on that front. Let's bounce over to the Houston Rockets, because we've talked about them a little bit as well, with the shift here to Mike D'Antoni style. And you and I think, mostly agreed on where we stood with this team as well, which is that you're going to hear a lot of negative press about the Rockets, about the fact that Dwight Howard is gone and he was giving them a hard time in the media, about the fact that they signed James Harden, or not signed him, but extended James Harden, a guy that gets a lot of flack for not playing any defense, and rightfully so. They brought in Ryan Anderson, a zero defense guy. They brought in Eric Gordon, a mostly zero defense guy who can't stay healthy. And so this team has a lot of names that people are going to talk about being sort of bad NBA fits, but in a Mike D'Antoni offense, these are guys that you should consider getting. The question is where, Vince, and that's where you and I have to sort of step in and try to weigh and give some thoughts. By the way, they also have Nene on their team now, if he could stay healthy. You and I both said on a previous show that we're targeting Trevor Ariza, and I'm sticking by that assessment. He had a great year last season, and they're just going to space the floor even more going forward. He was the number 29 ranked player in fantasy basketball last season, this most recent one. I see no reason why he can't replicate that.
He was last year's Danny Green.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of where I look at it. Like Danny
more
Green
steals,
and
fewer
Trevor Ariza
blocks.
are almost one and the same. Just one's a small forward and one's a shooting guard.
Trevor Ariza, more steals, fewer blocks. That's sort of the only change between them. But I mean, this is a guy that last year he was ranked 41st coming into the season. He ended the year, as I just mentioned, as a late 3rd round guy. If you could get him in the 4th round, I see no reason why not to.
Yeah, he's nice. I think he's going to be someone that you're definitely targeting. I'm not sold on just going after Ryan. I think Ryan Anderson's going to be one of those players that get drafted way too early. And for me, I think that's a mistake. I mean, he's a decent rebound. Maybe he gets you 6 a game, 7, 8. in that range. I don't think he gets you a double-double. You're really just getting him for three-pointers. And if I'm looking for a guy for three-pointers, I want someone who's also going to get me at least defensive stats. So I'm looking at Trevor Ariza over a guy like Ryan Anderson that even though he got paid, that doesn't change who he is as a basketball player and what he does on the floor. So that's my beware of guy. I think you should stamp him with someone else's headache if he goes a little too early.
Yeah,
I'm not drafting Anderson that early in drafts.
Yeah, he's had some injury issues throughout his career as well. He's probably more of like an seventh, eighth round kind of guy, 3-4 rounds behind Trevor Ariza. But boy, in that up-tempo offense, even though he's sort of a one or two trick pony, he's an 87% foul shooter, so that's kind of an interesting notion on a big guy. If that fits your mold, he's a high-scoring guy. He hit 2 threes a game last year, and that could go up. So I don't know if I'm full into someone else's headache on Ryan Anderson. I would consider him 7th, 8th, 9th round kind of guy if he's still floating around and he fits a need for your team.
That's perfectly where you want to get him, 7th, 8th, 9th. Like 7, I think 7 and 8 is fair. I think 9 would be like him dropping a little bit. 7 and 8 is just fine. It's a round or two behind Trevor Ariza, which is fine. That's where you want to get him. I just don't think that's where he's going to be where you're going to be able to see him at. I think he's going to be drafted too early, and mainly due to the fact, one, is his contract, and two, they're going to be really looking at him as overhyping him on his ability to run in D'Antoni's offense. And you brought up the free throw percentage and how it's so high, but he only takes 3.5 a game, last season. So it's not like he's getting to the line and a lot to where it's truly helping out your stat lines in any way. So again, he's more of just a specialist. And where do you want to get your specialist? Probably in the latter half of your draft. So 7, 8, I think that's just fine. I just think he's going to be someone that people are targeting a little too early, and that's where I have my worries with Anderson.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. If somebody snaps him up in the 6th, 7th round and you're sort of keeping an eye on him, just don't bat an eye. Let him float off the table. But if he falls just a tiny bit farther than that, that's where, to me, you can think about starting to grab him, knowing that you're going to get a slight headache, but a guy that could explode. And if he stays healthy and if he fits in that offense, he's the guy that could carry you in the three-point category. He has that upside in that one category, but like you said, Vince, he isn't going to do much for you elsewhere.
Last player I want to bring up for you, Dan, is Clint Capella. Where round are you expecting him to kind of be at? Because now he's the man at center. He fits this team to me. He runs the floor as good as any guard almost. He's so fast. He's lengthy. He just gets into foul trouble for me, which is my biggest issue. But he gives you a stat that that is almost hard to come across when you're looking at waivers, and that's blocks. Gets you blocks, he gets you rebounds. I think he has the potential to average a double-double, maybe 12 points and 10 rebounds. He's that type of guy. It's just the foul trouble, the free throw percentage, but again, those blocks and those steals could be something to really look at for a guy like Clint Capella. What are your thoughts on him?
Okay, so now I have to ask you a follow-up question. Where do you were you asking me where I see him going or where I would take him?
Both, actually.
Both. I see him getting drafted in the late rounds. I wouldn't draft him. I'm not.
Really?
I'm not a punt guy, and Capella's free throw percentage is unbearable. He shot 38% last year. Now he didn't take that many, but 38% can weigh you down quick. You don't have to take many for that to put a huge dent into a team's free throw percentage. I don't know if that's something that in a rotisserie league, at least, I don't know if that's something that you could really come back from. I don't know if you can win first place in a league with one guy weighing you down that hard in one category. Maybe you can. Maybe you can be good enough in the other ones. But to me, Capella isn't good enough in other categories where that is okay. In a head-to-head league, yeah, that's fine. He might go a week where he only takes 3 free throws. He might have a week following that up where he takes 20 and makes 6 of them. And, okay, you lose free throws one week, and maybe you win them the next. And you're going 50-50 in a category that's fine. Free throws are a little bit of a crapshoot in a head-to-head league anyway. In a rotisserie league, you just can't let that sag on you for the 6 months of the NBA season. Okay, let's hypothetically say then we are in a head-to-head league, and you're okay with not being the best in the league at the free throw percentage category. I'm still a late round guy on him. I know the upside is there, but I'm not sold on the progress. I'm not sold on exactly how he's going to fit. He's going to shoot a very high field goal percentage when they run pick and rolls. He's going to get you some blocks. He is going to get you into foul trouble. But he's 10th or later for me.
See, I'm just looking at his per 36 numbers right now, and I honestly don't see them as being too unreasonable. Maybe a guy who gets you 13 points, 13.3 points, 12.1 assists, 2.3 blocks, and one and a half steals, 1.4 steals, shooting 58.2% from the field. I mean, those are good numbers. The only thing that does, like you said, it's a punting category, and it's 37.9% from the free throw line. These are all per 36 numbers, but I don't see them being as unreasonable, being the being per 36 and him seeing a progression from one year to the next, and now as the starter, as the man at the center position. So
here's the issue,
he's still a late round guy, but I'd probably have him right around that same round as, and this is for like maybe 9-cat leagues, not necessarily a roto league, but I'd probably draft him 8th round.
Man, see, so you're a bit more sold, I think, on the minutes than I am. I have this sneaking suspicion that he may be the starting center, but he may still only play 22 minutes a ball game as they rotate Nene in there, as Ryan Anderson slides over to the 5, and you've got an Anderson, Ariza front court, Harden at the 3.
He just runs so well. That's why I think that, though. Like, I get what you're saying. It's the small ball that you think D'Antoni's going to run, but the fact that he's so young, 1, 2, he's so, I'm not going to say durable, because, I mean, he needs to work on that a little bit. I'm not saying that he's injury prone, but, I mean, he's kind of frail still, so maybe he gets a little bit stronger, but he runs the floor, like I said, like a small forward almost. He's so quick and so fast. And I think you need to have the defense down low, especially behind a guy like Ryan Anderson. If they're playing him the 30 minutes, you need to have a defender there behind him, and Clint Capella is that guy. That's where I'm seeing the minutes come. Not necessarily because he's going to be a ball dominant type of player or anything, but the fact that he does run the floor and can be up and down in D'Antoni offense, but also because of the liabilities that you're going to have on defense with Eric Gordon and Ryan Anderson. You need a shot blocker down there, and I think Clint Capella can be that guy.
I just don't think D'Antoni's that concerned with defense.
I mean, that's kind of true, too.
That's where, and we'll see how that one shakes out, certainly. The other team, Vince, in the Southwest that we've already given a quick profile of is the Dallas Mavericks. They've got the Golden State Warriors B team running out there, along with Darren Williams, who's still floating around, Wesley Matthews, who should be healthier this year, and he's kind of an interesting guy. Harrison Barnes, certainly interesting. They signed him to a big money contract. And then the center position, which will probably be mostly a timeshare. We know Andrew Bogut can't take the knees can't take extended time. So, all right, Vince, you're higher on Harrison Barnes than I am. What round are you taking him in right now?
Well, before to Harrison Barnes, we do have some news here that just broke, and just so happens to be about this Dallas Mavericks team. Dirk Nowitzki gets $50 million over 2 years in the new Mavs deal after Dallas increased final offer.
Well, that's good.
ESPN.
That moves Dwight Powell off the starting power forward spot, so that's probably good for them.
Yeah, but at the same time, Dwight Powell, or I should say Rick Carlisle, said that Dwight Powell is going to be one of those people that he's going to be moving and integrating into this team's offensive scheme and into his roster and making sure he gets minutes. And I think that's good. I'm pretty level-headed on Dwight Powell. I really like him.
Yeah, he's a
I think
decent
he
ball
could be
player.
something.
I'm not that interested in him from a fantasy standpoint. He's a decent ball player, though.
Yeah, I'm not saying fantasy-wise. I just think that he can develop into a player where he gets you blocks and he can hit that mid-range jumper. Who kind of reminds me of as a player, just a more athletic one, is a David Lee.
Yeah,
he can be like that type of player.
Probably not as smooth a passer at this point in his career, but I guess you could grow into that a little bit. But I'm not letting you off the Harrison Barnes train, Vince. I got to know, because I'm probably not going to be targeting him. Everybody has heard my stance on Barnes. I've watched him a decent amount with the Warriors, and certainly he has room now to grow for the first time. But I've never been all that impressed with what he's done outside of scoring and percentages. So where is the uptick that makes him a more relevant player?
The one is going to be the minutes, and I also think the fact that he's going to be the number 2 guy for this team. Yes, they brought back Darren Williams on a 1-year deal, but he's going to be injured a lot. I mean, just knowing his career, I'm not saying it's a for sure thing going to happen, but the fact that, you look over his career, he's just become injury prone, and you have to worry about something like that. But he's going to have the ball in his hands, and he's going to be able to do the things that he was not able to do for the Warriors. And you asked me around or where I'm looking at him at. I think I might blow kind of people a little bit away with what I'm about to say a little bit, but I'm probably going 4th or 5th round with Harrison Barnes.
I'm way behind you on that one. I'm like 8, 9 round kind of guy. He doesn't block shots. Maybe he'll try to get into it a little bit more. He's a good defender, mind you, but he's not a leaper. His steals numbers were never all that high in Golden State. He was just sort of a guy that was in the right spot at the right time. He did the little things well, but the numbers, the stuff that you need to make a guy a fantasy monster have never... I don't even really feel like we've seen flashes of it. Outside of the scoring, he's a decent rebounder. He's not a bad passer. He can shoot the 3, a good percentage, certainly for a guy that gets a lot of his shots sort of mid-range jumpers, long-range jumpers. He shot a decent field goal percentage, so that's good. And he's an okay free throw shooter, but I've never seen that ceiling that everybody's talking about, that area that he's going to leap this year. And so I'm probably I'm mostly going to avoid him altogether, but if he were to fall 4 or 5 rounds past what you were talking about, then yeah, I'll stumble into him and see what he can do in a larger role. And he might surprise me, but I'm not on the Harrison Barnes train, and I don't know that anything will get me there. The guy on the Mavs, actually, Vince, that I am more interested in this year is Wesley Matthews, because he was a disappointment last year after being a key cog in Portland. And I don't know that people really knew how hard it was for him to come back from that injury and to play all year long. That was really something, how quickly he returned. And he still turned in 8th round value. And to me, if I can steal Wesley Matthews a round or 2 ahead of that, maybe not the 6th, that's a bit early, but 7th, something in that neck of the woods. He's a big-time three-point shooter. He's a great free throw shooter. He does get you steals. He's a low turnovers guy. And I think that, when people look at what he did last year, he's a guy that may fall in drafts a little bit, and I'd love to scoop him up.
I have him as an 8th round guy, but I would personally take him in the 7th. That's what I wrote down right here.
Look at that. You and I agree again.
Yeah.
It was weird to be on opposite sides. It was uncomfortable.
I know. We almost were fighting, especially after that poem I gave you in the beginning of the show. It was almost a little disappointing. But no, now we're back on the same page. It's good, and I really like Wes Matthews. And coming back from the injury that he did, and then to see what he was able to do and still bring back, I believe, like you said, 8th round value on the season. I honestly feel like he can bring you back 5th round value on the season if he's fully healthy. And you see that guy from the Portland days where he's posting these smaller guards that are guarding him. He's knocking down the open 3-pointer. He's getting to the basket with a little bit more aggression and knocking down his shots with a little bit more consistency. I mean, Wesley Matthews is one of those offensive, just most offensive versatile players in the game because of what he can do. And like you said, he's a low turnover guy, decent percentages. I'm really high on Wesley Matthews. I'm not taking him I'm probably taking him in the 7th round, but I'm not taking him any earlier than that just because that injury still does scare me a little bit. And the numbers from last season does scare me. But he has the opportunity to be something and do something with this Mavs team. And I think, this team didn't change much in the scheme of what they were from last season to this year. This upcoming year, I should say. But, he had plenty of opportunities to do something. And I think it's just coming back from that injury and people not understanding how hard it is to come back from that Achilles injury. I think he's going to have a big bounce back year. And if there was a comeback player of the year award, I think he would have a chance or sorry, not comeback player, most improved player award. I think that if you're putting candidates in there, I think his name is going to get thrown in that bag real quick.
Yeah, and he actually did sort of begin to ramp up a little bit towards the end of the year. Fatigue may have ground him down a tad, but he's still hitting threes. He hit almost 3 a ball game 2 years ago with Portland, and that's what makes him such a unique player. He will get you some steals, not a terrible rebounder, good passer. Like you said, he can take guys down in the post, smaller guys, and that sort of buoys the field goal percentage when a lot of his other shots come from downtown. Let's shuffle along to Memphis here and keep this thing rumbling. The Grizzlies, they brought in Chandler Parsons. That's kind of the big switch for this Memphis team. Vince, how do you see him fitting in with a team that I never really quite get a feel for the Grizzlies' identity year to year. Every year they try to become a little bit more of an offensive-minded team, and every year they kind of slip back into just pounding it into Zebo in the post. Is this the year they finally open things up for real?
No.
They're
still going to be the only team in the NBA that really deals with the wanting to run a half-court offense and throwing that ball down low to Zebo or Gasol and seeing what the big men can do. But, I think Parsons adds a little bit more versatility to what they do have, being that Mike Conley can be off the ball a little bit more and knock down three-point shots, and Chandler Parsons being able to knock down threes. I'm looking at him, though. I just don't see how he fits in the scheme of this team and what system they're trying to run. They moved away from Dave Yeager. He's now in Sacramento, and they brought in that guy from Miami, and this is his first coaching job as a head coach. And so there's a lot of question marks I still have on this Memphis team. Everyone's saying they had a really good offseason by bringing back Conley, which I agree, but they didn't do anything to change the perception of that team and what they can be. And they still need shooting. And so I don't know where they've really upgraded other than the fact that Chandler Parsons is an upgrade at that small forward spot over Matt Barnes, and that they're going to hopefully be healthy all season long. But again, I have so many question marks with this team. I think the real fantasy player that I'm looking at, or the two I should say, is Marc Gasol and Mike Conley. I'm not even really that high on Zebo.
Are there any low-profile guys on this team that you're looking at? They've got Tony Allen, who might see some significant minutes right now, unless they get something else in the shooting guard spot. They've also got Brandon Wright, JaMychal Green, some bigger names, or Green, I guess, a guy that got a little bit more playing time when everybody got hurt, but Brandon Wright, who's a very interesting, rangy big man, a lanky fella. Are these guys going to be seeing enough minutes to be relevant?
I think Tony Allen is, but the thing about Tony Allen is he's a specialist also. He does one thing, and he'll be on the waivers and off the waivers at any given time throughout the season.
Yeah.
And but he gives you those steals, and he's one of the best defensive players in the game today, despite the age. Maybe James Ennis can come in and start knocking down some shots. Andrew Harrison can come in and be a versatile wing. He showed what he can be during Summer League this year. And then maybe rookie Wade Baldwin can get minutes, but these are not guys that I'm looking at as coming in and being fantasy players that you want to really be targeting at all.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the core that you're looking at it within Parsons, Zebo, Gasol, and Conley, and that's kind of where it ends. I don't see any other players on this team where you're like, I need him on my roster come draft day.
I'm almost tempted to stamp the entire team with someone else's headache at this point, because I need to see some more free-flowing offense. I need to see Mike Conley kind of get back to that trajectory that we thought he was on a couple years ago, but leveled off a tad. I know he made a lot of money in the process. And Marc Gasol, we need to see him. He's such a warrior, but we really need to see him stay healthy. He doesn't these days. He just hasn't. And
I bet you the Grizzlies are juiced that he decided to opt out of going to the Olympics. Don't get hurt out there. You just got back from being healthy. Let's not take a risk on anything else.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I want to reassess this team in a month or two, but right now I'm not seeing a ton of massive values on the Memphis team. And I would advise people to see if maybe we can't do a little bit of digging elsewhere. Perhaps, Vince, the New Orleans Pelicans. To me, this is a team that is jam-packed with possible value precisely for the reasons that Memphis is not. And that is, you had guys get hurt last year that are, aside from Drew Holiday, normally a little bit more durable. You had a big man who misses a game here and there, and I think he's getting maybe a little bit of an unfair rap. But there was really no reason for Anthony Davis to be playing a ton of games down the stretch when that team was so far out of contention. But these names, Tyreke Evans, Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday, these are guys that are going to fall because of last year's injuries or because of injury histories. So, Vince, I ask you, do you have the stones to draft any of those three guys?
Tyreke Evans, stamp him with someone else's headache. Drew Holiday, I like him.
Oh,
Honestly,
so there you go.
I'm a huge fan of Drew Holiday. Of course, the injuries worry me, but I think Tyreke might be on the way out, honestly. And I think Tyreke might be on the way out. And sorry, there's another podcast going on, and I just heard a loud noise coming from the office. I'm in the ABI studios, so it's kind of like, oh, I heard another podcast.
There's things happening, Vince. The world is alive with podcasts.
Yeah. Back to what I was saying, though, is I'm a huge fan of Drew Holiday. I think Holiday is one of those guys that, he can be something for a team. He can potentially be that number 2 option for that Pelicans team. Or with Tyreke, I just don't see him being a good fit there. And I think he's being that, since this is the last year of his contract, I mean, he could be an asset for another team that's willing to take the risk on a player like him. My favorite free agency acquisition, though, and I think it might surprise you, Dan, is I really like Terrence Jones next to Anthony Davis. I think that's a real good fit. 2 Kentucky guys. Terrence Jones can stretch the floor, and he can block shots. I mean, he's exactly what they need next to a guy like Anthony Davis.
Yeah, it seems like finally they've got a guy that they can plop into that spot that they hope at least that he can stay healthy too, because Terrence Jones has had some weird injuries over the last year as well. But I guess it comes down to where they're a value in a draft versus where they are not. So Anthony Davis, let's start with the big name on this team. He's probably not going top 3 anymore, is he?
There's a good chance he still goes top 3. No, never mind. Take that back.
I got you hemming and hawing here.
I'd say top 5.
So last year, by average, he was the number 9 ranked fantasy player by average. And then, of course, you factor in whatever games may have been missed. Still, though, 24 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal and a half, 2 blocks a ball game. Those are pretty good numbers from a guy shooting 49% on almost 19 field goals per game. So I guess, does he fall to 9th in a draft this year, Vince? Is there a possibility you could get him that low? I doubt it.
No, he's going top 5, 100%. And what I will say, too, about his team and his numbers and the things that happened with him is that he needed help. The whole team needed help. They needed players there, and I think that they added the depth that they needed, at least next to him with Terrence Jones. I like Buddy Hield. I think Buddy Hield is an interesting player to place there now that Eric Gordon is gone, and maybe that's a player we need to be talking about. And I know your thoughts on drafting rookies, but a player like Buddy Hield, who is going to be looked at as a shooter for this team and to knock down the open shot, maybe he can build up defensively throughout the season. But I'm still looking at him as like a specialist type of player, nothing more than that. But again, I think that they've made some interesting moves. I think that this team has the potential to, kind of build back to what they were just 2 seasons ago, making the playoffs and getting swept in the first round by the Warriors. But again, I have Anthony Davis as a top 5. I don't see him slipping any lower than that. And if he does, you just at 6, I think that's a great grab for Anthony Davis because he's going to be blocking shots, steals. The points are still going to be there. I think he's going to shoot a higher percentage now. And like I said, I'm really high on Anthony Davis, and I think this is going to be a big bounce back year for him, especially after he just lost all that money this past season for not making any of the All NBA teams.
Yeah, that was really something. So that's your look at the Southwest Division. We have finished up the Western Conference, Vince. Next week, we will make our way eastward and take a look at some of those divisions out on the opposite coast. He is Vince Miracle. He is at VM Center on Twitter. I am at Dan Besbris. It also happens to be my name. The website is hoop-ball.com. The Twitter feed is at hoopballtweets. Send us your notes. What's that hashtag, Vince?
Fantasy NBA Today. Let us know about all your guys' thoughts on what's going on in the fantasy world and this podcast. Also, subscribe to all of the shows, either be on iTunes or soon going to be transitioning possibly into Stitcher for you Android users. And for all those people that want us an app, go subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's just YouTube Hoop Ball, and then look up subscribers, and bam, you'll see the logo.
Have you tried out for doing the legal warnings at the end of insurance commercials and fast food commercials? Because I feel like that's what I threw on you right there. Prices and participation may vary. Only good on podcasts located in California's Central Valley. Subject to approval of the Board of Trustees.
I think I need to learn how to speak a little bit faster, but yeah, that would be awesome if they'd pay me to do that, because I think I speak fast enough to do it.
Yeah, man, you're all jazzed up on caffeine. You're rolling.
I feel good.
This was Fantasy NBA Today. The week concludes. We'll be back with you next week. Again, we'll head east. For Vince, I'm Dan. Have a fantastic weekend. So long, everybody.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.